The house was unusually still, the silence broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. Marissa stood in my office, her voice trembling as she pleaded, "Alex, they're your kids too. They deserve your support." I leaned back in my chair, my expression stoic. "The trust funds I set up for them are secure. Neither you nor Bruce can touch them." "You've taken enough," I replied coldly. Her face turned pale, the realization dawning that the control she once had over me was gone. I had rebuilt myself into someone unyielding, someone she could no longer manipulate. Before I unravel the full story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this tale intrigues you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. Millbrook was the kind of quaint town where time moved at an easy pace. Nestled in rolling hills and lined with Victorian-style homes, it boasted cozy cafes and a single bookshop that served as a community hub. The crisp autumn air carried the earthy scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke, a hallmark of its charm. Neighbors waved from their porches, children played under sprawling oak trees, and families gathered for Friday night football games. Alexander Hood, a 42-year-old software developer, embodied the town's reliability and steadiness. His wire-rimmed glasses and the flecks of gray at his temples gave him an understated presence, concealing a sharp mind. Alex adored his wife, Marissa, a dedicated pediatrician, and their 3 children, Thomas, Emma, and Lucas. Their family life appeared idyllic: warm family dinners, weekends filled with laughter, and a home radiating love. Late one evening, Alex worked in his home office, the rhythmic clatter of his keyboard blending with the low hum of dual monitors. The clock read 11:47 p.m., and the desk bore evidence of a life well lived: a coffee-stained world's best dad mug and a family photo. Then came the sound of Marissa's laughter drifting in from the garden, followed by words that froze Alex in place. "Can you believe he still has no clue?" For a moment, Alex couldn't breathe. Her words hung in the air, sharp and piercing, shattering the tranquil veneer of his life. His hands trembled as they gripped the edge of the desk. Disbelief surged through him, dismantling the trust he had built over 15 years of marriage. The quiet hum of his office now felt mocking, each keystroke a hollow echo in a room that had become stifling. Memories once cherished resurfaced, now tinged with suspicion. Thomas's laughing eyes, so different from his own. Emma's auburn hair, distinct from either his or Marissa's. Lucas's remarkable talent for numbers, a trait Alex had once attributed to genetics, now felt like a cruel anomaly. Then there was Bruce Cumans. The name now carried an unbearable weight. Images of Bruce at Lucas's baptism, advising Alex's mother on investments, and standing as best man at his wedding flickered through his mind. How many times had Alex laughed with him, trusted him, shared drinks with him, all the while blind to his betrayal? The realization struck. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a calculated deception executed with precision. Adding to the pain was his mother, Caroline. Her complicity twisted every memory of her care and guidance, staining the moral compass she had instilled in him. Alex sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. This betrayal wasn't just personal, it unraveled his very identity. How could he trust his own judgment when his entire life had been a carefully constructed lie? Hiring Jared Glover wasn't an easy decision. Alex had always taken pride in his independence and his problem-solving abilities. But as he sat in a dimly lit coffee shop 2 towns over, watching Glover take notes with meticulous precision, Alex realized this was a mess he couldn't untangle alone. Glover, a seasoned private investigator with a sharp eye and a reputation for uncovering the truth, exuded quiet confidence. "Leave nothing out," Glover instructed, his tone calm yet firm. Alex recounted every detail of Marissa's betrayal, his voice steady but laden with emotion. Glover asked pointed questions, then assured Alex he would begin immediately. Days later, the first report arrived in an envelope, sealed with Glover's practiced efficiency. Alex hesitated, his stomach churning as he opened it. Inside were the results of DNA tests conducted on his children. The cold, clinical language revealed the devastating truth. Thomas, Emma, and Lucas shared no genetic link to Alex. Instead, they were perfect matches with Bruce Cumans. Alex stared at the results for what felt like an eternity, the stark reality burning into his mind. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a complete erasure of everything he thought he had built. Every trait he had taken pride in nurturing came from someone else. The next revelation came when Glover uncovered a pattern of suspicious financial activity. Cross-referencing bank statements, he revealed how Bruce and Marissa had funneled money into offshore accounts for years. Each transfer was disguised as routine household expenses, joint vacations, medical reimbursements, or investment profits from Bruce's firm. The amounts were staggering, far beyond what Alex believed their household expenses required. During their second meeting, Glover spread the documents out across the table, tapping a particular account with his pen. "This account," he said, "is under your wife's name, but it's linked to Bruce's shell company." Alex's world had been turned upside down. "They've been using your family's resources to fund their escapades? Caroline's beach house, primarily?" The mention of his mother's vacation property struck a chord. To Alex, it had always been a tranquil retreat, a venue for family gatherings and charitable events his mother organized. Now it was tainted, a backdrop for their deceit. "Here's the utility data," Glover continued, pointing out patterns. "Energy usage spikes on weekends when you were away, precisely when Bruce and Marissa claimed they had work obligations." Alex's heartbeat quickened. He had never questioned Marissa's late-night hospital calls or Bruce's frequent business trips. Now he saw how these alibis had concealed their betrayal. Every new detail in Glover's report deepened the wound, each revelation chipping away at the life Alex thought he knew. The most devastating discovery came through emails. Glover's tech expert had combed through Caroline's archived correspondence, uncovering exchanges with Marissa that spanned over a decade. As Alex read, waves of nausea and fury washed over him. His own mother, the woman he had trusted above all else, had orchestrated the relationship between Marissa and Bruce. One email sent weeks before Alex's wedding read, "Bruce is the better match, dear. Alex is stable, successful, and devoted to you. This way you can have it all. Alex's security and Bruce's passion. Trust me, this is for the best." The casual tone was chilling, as though she were arranging dinner plans rather than orchestrating a conspiracy that would shatter her son's life. Other emails revealed Caroline's role in enabling the affair. Not only had she encouraged Marissa, but she also helped craft excuses for her absences, even volunteering to babysit during their illicit weekends. Alex's hands shook as he read, the betrayal from his mother cutting even deeper than Marissa's. She had prioritized someone else's happiness over his, convinced she was acting in his best interest. Piece by piece, Glover's findings painted a vivid portrait of deception. Alex began noticing patterns he had overlooked. Marissa's conveniently timed calls from the hospital, Bruce's frequent unannounced visits, and Caroline's defensive reactions whenever family matters arose. The intricate web of lies had been years in the making, spun by those Alex had trusted most. With each revelation, the weight on Alex grew heavier. But beneath the pain and anger, a spark of determination began to ignite. If Marissa, Bruce, and even his own mother had built this elaborate charade, Alex would tear it down with equal precision. By the time he left Glover's office that day, he was no longer a broken man. He was a man with a plan. As Alex drove home, the evidence in his briefcase felt like a ticking time bomb. He knew he couldn't confront them yet, not until everything was in place. The truth had shattered his world, but Alex vowed it would also be his weapon to rebuild it on his terms. The storm had begun, and Alex was no longer a passive victim. He was transforming into something sharper, more resilient, and far more dangerous to those who had wronged him. The next chapter opened in Miranda Hughes's sleek, minimalist office. Known for her relentless approach to justice, Miranda exuded confidence. The quiet gravitas of her workspace mirrored her sharp, no-nonsense demeanor. Alex slid a thick folder across her desk. Documents, reports, and the painstakingly gathered evidence from Glover. Miranda flipped through the papers, her movements precise, her brow furrowing as she absorbed the scale of the betrayal. Finally, she leaned back, adjusting her glasses. This isn't just personal betrayal, she said firmly. It's a systematic dismantling of trust and assets. If we approach this correctly, we'll leave them with no way out. Alex's jaw tightened as he nodded, his voice steady despite the tension in his chest. I don't just want justice, he replied. I want to make sure my children are protected. No matter what. Miranda's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. Then we start with your assets, she said. The first step was securing Alex's finances. Miranda brought in Gustavo Goodrich, a seasoned financial advisor skilled in safeguarding wealth in complex situations. Seated at the conference table, Alex listened intently as Gustavo outlined a detailed plan. We'll create protective layers, Gustavo explained, displaying a diagram on his tablet. Trusts, offshore accounts, and blind investments. Everything will be entirely legal, but nearly impossible for anyone else to access. Alex approved the plan immediately, understanding the need to shield his hard-earned wealth, not for himself, but for his children. Gustavo quickly established independent trust funds for Thomas, Emma, and Lucas. These accounts were fortified with ironclad terms, ensuring only the children could access them under specific conditions, like education or major life milestones. Their futures are secure, Gustavo assured him, and Marissa or Bruce will never be able to touch these funds. Meanwhile, Alex maintained an air of normalcy at home. Each morning, he kissed Marissa on the cheek as she left for work, her hospital bag slung casually over her shoulder. Evenings were spent helping the kids with homework, sharing meals, and telling bedtime stories. Every interaction was a carefully crafted act designed to buy him time. Behind the scenes, Alex's life was a flurry of covert activity. He scheduled meetings with Miranda and Gustavo during hours Marissa believed he was at work. Every email and phone call was meticulously erased to ensure no trace of his plans remained. Sitting across from Marissa at the dinner table, listening to her recount mundane hospital anecdotes, was the hardest part. He scrutinized her for signs of guilt or cracks in her facade. But Marissa played her role as flawlessly as he did. The silence between them became an unspoken battleground. Meanwhile, Miranda's team worked tirelessly, compiling a watertight case. Surveillance photos, email correspondences, financial records, and DNA tests were organized into an airtight dossier. The legal strategy was straightforward. Expose the truth. Marissa and Bruce faced insurmountable evidence, leaving them with no room to maneuver. Timing is crucial, Miranda advised during a late-night meeting. We'll strike when they least expect it. This isn't just about revealing the truth, it's about controlling the narrative. Alex admired her meticulous approach. Every move was strategically planned, from filing for divorce to securing the house and other shared assets. His company was quietly restructured, with shares placed into blind trust to ensure Marissa couldn't make a claim. Despite the careful preparation, Alex's emotions often threatened to overwhelm him. Late at night, alone in his office, he would stare at family photos. The smiling faces of Thomas, Emma, and Lucas reminded him why he couldn't waver. His love for them remained unwavering, even as he wrestled with the knowledge of their true parentage. In those quiet moments, he reaffirmed his resolve, not out of vengeance, but for their futures. They deserved stability, security, and a life free from the shadow of their parents' betrayals. They deserved to be seen and supported by those who genuinely cared. As weeks passed, Alex perfected the balance between meticulous planning and outward pretense. The foundation was laid, trust funds established, evidence compiled, and Miranda's legal strategy ready for execution. Outwardly, life in the Hood household appeared unchanged. Marissa maintained her facade, Bruce continued his charm at family gatherings, and Caroline stopped by with baked goods, her conspiratorial smile betraying the depth of her betrayal. Alex greeted them all with calm composure, his true intentions hidden behind an impenetrable mask. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Though his world had been shattered, Alex was determined to rebuild, not as the naive husband he once was, but as a man ready to expose the lies that had defined his life for far too long. Every piece was in place, and the moment of reckoning drew nearer. Evenings were particularly challenging for Alex. Sitting at the dinner table, in the living room, or by his children's beds, he felt both comforted and tormented. He adored them, Thomas with his boundless curiosity, Emma with her quiet grace, and Lucas with his infectious enthusiasm for learning. Yet every moment was tainted by the cruel reality. They were not his by blood. The thought gnawed at him, though it never diminished the love he felt in their presence. One evening, as the sun set, Alex sat with Lucas at the kitchen table. The boy was struggling with fractions, gripping his pencil tightly as he frowned at his workbook. Here, Alex said gently, taking the pencil and drawing a diagram. Think of it like pizza slices. If you cut the whole pie into 8 pieces and eat 3, how many are left? Lucas's face lit up with understanding. 5, he exclaimed, grinning wide. Alex couldn't help but smile back, pride swelling in his chest. Exactly, he said, ruffling the boy's hair. You've got it. But as Lucas turned back to his workbook, Alex's smile faded. In the boy's delighted expression, he saw Bruce's eyes, a painful reminder of the deception underpinning the bond he cherished. The warmth of the moment felt fleeting, almost borrowed. Later that night, Alex lingered outside Emma's room as the sound of her violin drifted through the door. She was practicing a haunting, melancholic melody he didn't recognize. He admired her dedication, the way she poured emotion into every note. But the question lingered. Was her passion for music inherited from Bruce, or was it uniquely her own? Alex wanted to believe it didn't matter, that nurture outweighed nature. Yet the uncertainty lingered, leaving behind an ache he couldn't ignore. He had raised her, supported her, and encouraged her. Was that not enough to make her his? Thomas, the eldest, was another source of pride and heartache. At 14, he was maturing into a confident young man. One evening after dinner, Thomas approached Alex with a soccer strategy he had devised. Dad, look, he said, spreading a hand-drawn diagram across the coffee table. If we move the midfielders like this during defense, we can block counterattacks better. Alex studied the diagram, nodding with approval. That's smart, he said. You're thinking ahead, anticipating their moves. Your coach will be impressed. Thomas beamed, his excitement contagious. But as Alex watched him, the familiar crinkle in his eyes brought a pang of grief. It was Bruce's expression, not his. The realization struck like a blow, making it hard for Alex to meet his gaze. He forced a smile, praising Thomas's creativity. But the weight of the truth lingered. In the quiet hours when the house was still, Alex often retreated to his office. There, he stared at family photos, snapshots of birthdays, vacations, and ordinary moments that once felt perfect. He searched their faces for traces of himself, but found none. These photos, once symbols of joy, now felt like relics of a life he no longer recognized. Despite the pain, Alex couldn't distance himself from the children. They were innocent, victims of circumstances beyond their control. He couldn't punish them for the actions of their mother or Bruce, nor let his anguish color their interactions. Instead, he channeled his love into safeguarding their futures. The trust funds became more than financial safety nets. They were Alex's promise to his children, a way to provide for their dreams no matter what unfolded. Even as he worked to protect them, the emotional toll weighed heavily. He questioned everything: his role as a father, the authenticity of his love, and whether the children would one day see him as a stranger. The uncertainty was suffocating, but it never extinguished the love that anchored him. One night, Lucas approached Alex while he was working. Dad, he said, holding up a drawing he had made, a simple sketch of their family, complete with their dog. Max, I made this for you, Lucas said, handing over a drawing. Alex accepted it, his throat tightening as he studied the image. He was at the center, depicted with exaggerated glasses and a wide smile. Thanks, buddy, he managed to say, pulling Lucas into a hug. At that moment, Alex realized something profound. Love, real love, was not defined by genetics. It was forged in moments like these, helping with homework, listening to violin practice, and supporting his children's aspirations. The betrayal couldn't erase the love he felt for them, or the role he had played in their lives. Though the pain of deception was real, so was his love. And that love gave him the strength to move forward. It wasn't about reclaiming what he had lost. It was about preserving what truly mattered, even in the face of unimaginable betrayal. Thanksgiving morning arrived, crisp and cold, with frost clinging to the windows, a reflection of the tension simmering beneath the surface in the Hood household. The air inside carried the warm aroma of roasting turkey and spiced pies, concealing the meticulous preparation Alex had put into this day. The dining table was set to perfection, every silver fork and crystal glass sparkling under the chandelier's glow. Yet beneath each guest's napkin lay an envelope capable of shattering lives. Alex moved through the house with quiet precision, his actions measured. He greeted Marissa with a calm smile as she adjusted her apron, her cheeks flushed with pride at hosting what she believed would be another successful family gathering. "Everything's perfect," she remarked while adding the final touches to the table. Alex murmured a vague agreement, his gaze lingering on her longer than usual. She looked radiant, confident, innocent even. The thought churned his stomach. Guests began arriving shortly after noon. Bruce and Krista were the first to step through the door, their polished smiles firmly in place. Bruce handed Alex an expensive bottle of wine, his handshake firm and assured, a man blissfully unaware of the reckoning ahead. Caroline arrived next, her usual grace masking the quiet authority she always carried. One by one, Marissa's colleagues and family friends trickled in, filling the room with laughter and conversation. Despite the convivial atmosphere, Alex felt the tension rising like a coiled spring. Every smile, every polite exchange felt like part of a scripted play, one for which only he knew the ending. He watched Marissa float effortlessly between guests, laughing at Bruce's jokes, her charm lighting up the room. Caroline poured wine with practiced ease, doting on the children while ensuring everything appeared seamless. To anyone else, it was the picture of a perfect Thanksgiving. As the guests settled into their seats, Alex stood at the head of the table and raised his glass for the customary toast. His voice was steady, betraying none of the storm beneath the surface. "Before we begin," he said, "I've prepared something for each of you. You'll find an envelope under your napkin. Please take a moment to read." The rustle of paper replaced the hum of conversation as the guests opened their envelopes. Alex remained standing, his eyes scanning the room as shock and understanding dawned on their faces. The atmosphere shifted in an instant, the warmth of the room replaced by a suffocating tension. The calm before the storm had given way. Krista's sharp gasp broke the silence first. Her hand flew to her mouth as incriminating photos spilled onto the table before her. "Bruce," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is this?" Bruce, seated beside her, turned pale as he sifted through his own envelope's contents. DNA test results, bank statements, and surveillance photos, each damning piece forming an irrefutable picture. His composed demeanor cracked as he turned to Alex, his voice a mix of anger and panic. "Alex, what is this supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what it means," Alex replied coldly, his calm voice cutting through the tension like a blade. 15 years, Bruce. 15 years of lies, betrayal, and theft. Consider this your reckoning." Marissa, seated across the table, clutched her envelope tightly, her knuckles white as her eyes scanned its contents. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled. "Alex, please," she began, her voice quivering. "I can explain." "Explain what?" Alex snapped, his composure slipping for the first time. "That you spent our entire marriage lying to me? That you let me believe I was raising my own children while you and Bruce carried on behind my back?" Marissa's lips moved, but no words came out. Caroline, sitting beside her, interjected, her voice firm but desperate. "Alex, I only ever wanted what was best for you. You have to understand." "Best for me?" Alex interrupted, his voice rising. He pointed to the damning email in her envelope. "These aren't the actions of someone who wanted the best for me, Mother. You manipulated my entire life to suit your version of what it should be. You chose Bruce. You chose Marissa. You didn't care about me. You cared about control." Caroline's composure faltered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I thought I was protecting you," she whispered. "No," Alex said, his tone final. "You were protecting your own narrative at my expense." Across the table, Krista rose to her feet, trembling as she clutched photos of Bruce and Marissa at Caroline's beach house. "All these years," she said, her voice breaking, "you made me feel like I wasn't enough. And all the while She turned to Bruce, fury blazing in her eyes. You were building a second family behind my back. Krista, please, Bruce began, his tone pleading. She cut him off with a slap that echoed through the room. Don't you dare, she spat. Don't you dare try to justify this. At the far end of the table, the children sat in growing confusion and dread. Thomas, the eldest, broke the silence. Dad, he said hesitantly, his voice trembling. What's going on? Alex turned to his children. Max, I made this for you, Lucas said, holding up his drawing. Alex took it, his throat tightening as he studied the image. He was drawn at the center, complete with exaggerated glasses and a big grin. Thanks, buddy, Alex managed to say, pulling Lucas into a hug. In that instant, Alex realized something profound. True love isn't defined by biology. It's built in moments like these, helping with homework, listening to violin practice, and supporting his children's aspirations. The betrayal couldn't erase the love he felt or the role he had played in their lives. While the pain of deception was undeniable, his love remained steadfast. And that love became his strength. This wasn't about reclaiming what he had lost. It was about preserving what truly mattered, even amidst unimaginable betrayal. Thanksgiving morning arrived, cold and crisp, with frost glittering on the windows, a reflection of the tension simmering beneath the surface of the Hood household. The inviting aroma of roasting turkey and spiced pies filled the air, masking the meticulous planning Alex had poured into this day. The dining table was arranged with perfect precision, every silver, fork, and crystal glass sparkling beneath the chandelier's light. Hidden discreetly beneath each guest's napkin was an envelope that would upend their lives. Alex moved about the house with quiet determination, every action measured. He greeted Marissa with a calm smile as she adjusted her apron, her cheeks flushed with pride at hosting what she believed would be another successful family gathering. Everything's perfect, she remarked, adding the final touches to the table. Alex murmured a vague agreement, his gaze lingering on her a moment longer than usual. She appeared radiant, confident, even innocent. The thought made his stomach churn. Guests began arriving around noon. Bruce and Krista were the first through the door, their polished smiles firmly in place. Bruce handed Alex an expensive bottle of wine, his handshake confident, a man completely unaware of the reckoning ahead. Caroline arrived soon after, her usual poise masking the quiet authority she carried. Gradually, Marissa's colleagues and family friends trickled in, filling the room with laughter and chatter. Despite the lively atmosphere, Alex felt the tension building like a coiled spring. Every smile, every polite exchange felt like a rehearsed performance, one for which only he knew the script's ending. He watched Marissa float effortlessly between guests, laughing at Bruce's jokes, her charm lighting up the room. Caroline poured wine with practiced ease, doting on the children while maintaining the facade of perfection. To anyone else, it looked like a picture-perfect Thanksgiving. When the guests settled at the table, Alex stood at its head and raised his glass for the customary toast. His voice was steady, revealing nothing of the storm beneath the surface. Before we begin, he announced, I've prepared something for each of you. You'll find an envelope under your napkin. Please take a moment to read. The sound of paper rustling replaced the hum of conversation as the guests opened their envelopes. Alex remained standing, his eyes scanning the room as realization and shock spread across their faces. The warm, festive atmosphere dissipated, replaced by a suffocating tension. The calm before the storm had ended. Krista gasped sharply, breaking the silence. Her hand flew to her mouth as incriminating photos spilled onto the table. Bruce, she whispered, her voice trembling. What is this? Bruce, seated beside her, paled as he sifted through his own envelope's contents. DNA test results, bank statements, and surveillance photos, each piece forming an irrefutable case. His composure shattered as he turned to Alex, his voice a mix of panic and anger. Alex, what is this supposed to mean? You know exactly what it means, Alex replied coldly, his calm tone cutting through the room like a blade. 15 years, Bruce. 15 years of lies, betrayal, and theft. Consider this your reckoning. Marissa, seated across the table, clutched her envelope, her knuckles white as her face drained of color. Alex, please, she began, her voice trembling. I can explain. Explain what? Alex snapped, his composure cracking. That you spent our entire marriage lying to me? That you let me believe I was raising my own children while you and Bruce carried on behind my back? Marissa opened her mouth but couldn't form a response. Caroline, sitting beside her, tried to interject, her voice firm but desperate. Alex, I only ever wanted what was best for you. You have to understand. Best for me? Alex interrupted, his voice rising. He pointed to the damning email in her envelope. These aren't the actions of someone who wanted the best for me, Mother. You manipulated my entire life to suit your version of what it should be. You chose Bruce. You chose Marissa. You didn't care about me. You cared about control. Caroline's facade cracked, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered. No, Alex said firmly. You were protecting your own narrative, at my expense. Across the table, Krista rose, trembling as she clutched photos of Bruce and Marissa at Caroline's beach house. All these years, she said, her voice breaking. You made me feel like I wasn't enough, and all the while you... She turned to Bruce, fury blazing in her eyes. You were building a second family behind my back. Krista, please, Bruce began, his voice pleading. She silenced him with a slap that echoed through the room. Don't you dare, she spat. Don't you dare try to justify this. At the far end of the table, the children sat in growing confusion and fear. Thomas, the eldest, finally broke the silence. Dad, he said hesitantly, his voice trembling. What's going on? Alex turned to face his children. His reflection in the mirror was almost unrecognizable, a man hardened by resolve and clarity. Emotionally, Alex found refuge in solitude and routine. He exchanged the quiet chaos of Millbrook for the measured order of his new life. Therapy, though challenging at first, became a space where he could confront the anger and sorrow he had carried for so long. One day, his therapist said, transformation isn't about forgetting who you were, it's about deciding who you want to be. The words resonated deeply, becoming a mantra that echoed in his mind on sleepless nights. Gradually, Alex began to release the bitterness tied to his past, though his love for his children remained steadfast. Professionally, Alex's rise was nothing short of remarkable. He founded Hood Innovations, a company that combined his expertise in software development with emerging technologies like blockchain and AI. His approach was relentless, yet visionary, with every product embodying his new philosophy of transparency and integrity. Under his leadership, Hood Innovations grew into a leading force in the tech world, revolutionizing supply chain management across Asia. He became a sought-after keynote speaker at tech conferences where he shared his insights. Success isn't about avoiding failure, he said during one event. It's about learning from it and rebuilding with purpose. Despite his packed days filled with meetings and innovation, Alex's nights were often marked by a quiet loneliness. He would sit by the expansive windows of his penthouse, overlooking the shimmering cityscape, sipping green tea while his thoughts drifted to Thomas, Emma, and Lucas. The letters he had left for them weren't just words, they were promises. He hoped that one day when they were ready, they would understand why he had left and perhaps seek him out. As the years passed, Alex became a symbol of resilience in the tech industry, yet within him lingered a quiet yearning, a mix of regret for the life he had lost and hope for the life he was building. His transformation wasn't about erasing the past, it was a declaration that he wouldn't let it define him. Every step forward was both a farewell to what had been and a commitment to what could be. A decade later, Alex's return to Millbrook wasn't marked by fanfare but by quiet determination. The once thriving town he had left behind now bore signs of decline. Main Street, once bustling with life, was now lined with boarded-up storefronts, peeling paint, and faded signs, a testament to a community struggling to hold on to its past. Yet, despite the visible decay, Alex saw potential, a chance to rebuild not just for himself, but for the town that had shaped him. From the tinted windows of his Bentley, Alex observed familiar landmarks. The Victorian homes, the park where his children had played, even the old Hood residence. Everything seemed smaller now, worn by time. But Alex was no longer the man who had left Millbrook years ago. The person who stepped out of the car at the tech park was transformed. His tailored suit, sharp gaze, and composed demeanor reflected success and resilience. The tech park, his first acquisition upon his return, was a shadow of its former self. Once a hub of innovation, it had fallen into neglect, its grounds overrun with weeds. But under Alex's leadership, the site was beginning to show signs of revival. Infrastructure was being modernized, and banners bearing the Hood Innovations logo promised a brighter future. Millbrook would rise again, but this time on Alex's terms. Word of Alex's return spread quickly. Marissa was the first to reach out, requesting a meeting at her modest clinic on the outskirts of town. When Alex arrived, she greeted him with nervous energy. Her once polished appearance had faded, mirroring the clinic's humble state, a far cry from the prestigious hospital she had once commanded. "Alex," she began, her voice trembling. "Thank you for coming." He regarded her with calm detachment, the measured composure he had perfected over the years. "I'm here. Speak." Marissa hesitated, wringing her hands. I wanted to apologize for everything. I made terrible choices, and I know I hurt you more than I can ever fix." Alex's expression didn't waver. "You're right. You can't fix it." Her breath hitched, but she pressed on. "I've tried to rebuild, for the children, for myself. I regret it every single day." Alex's response was devoid of anger, his tone steady. "Your regret is yours to bear. My concern has always been the children, and they seem to have turned out well despite everything." Marissa's tears spilled over, but Alex remained unmoved. For him, this was closure, not reconciliation. Caroline also sought him out, arriving unannounced at the tech park. Her once commanding presence had withered. Alex allowed her into his office, more out of obligation than a desire to reconnect. "Alexander," she began, her voice shaking, "I've come to ask for your forgiveness. I was wrong to interfere, to think I knew what was best." Alex leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "You didn't think, Mother. You acted. You chose control over honesty, and you've paid the price." Tears welled in Caroline's eyes. "I've lost everything, my place in the community, the respect of my grandchildren, even my relationship with you. I just want a chance to make things right." Alex's reply was firm. "Some things can't be made right, but I've ensured you'll never be without support. That's all I can offer." Caroline left, her shoulders heavy with regret. For Alex, it was another tie severed, another chapter closed. The most meaningful moment came days later, when Thomas, Emma, and Lucas visited Alex at the tech park. Now, adults, they carried themselves with the confidence of individuals who had faced challenges and grown stronger. Thomas, 24, had joined Hood Innovations and earned his place through hard work. Emma, 22, had blossomed into a graceful artist, her creativity matched by quiet strength. Lucas, 19, was a prodigy in his own right, already delving into blockchain innovation. "Dad," Thomas began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "we've missed you." Alex's heart swelled, though he maintained his composure. "I've missed you too," he said softly. "I've followed your lives from afar, but seeing you here in person means everything." Emma stepped forward, her gaze searching his. "Why did you stay away so long? Why not tell us sooner?" she asked. Alex hesitated before responding with candor. "I believed you deserved a childhood free from the weight of what happened between your mother and me. I wanted you to grow into yourselves without my shadow hanging over you." Lucas, ever the logical one, nodded thoughtfully. "And now? Why come back now?" he asked. "Because it's time," Alex answered plainly. "Time to reconnect. Time to rebuild." The conversation flowed effortlessly after that, punctuated by laughter and shared memories. For the first time in years, Alex felt a profound sense of belonging, not tied to the past, but rooted in the future they could create together. Under Alex's leadership, the tech park became the centerpiece of Millbrook's revival. State-of-the-art facilities attracted top-tier talent, while collaborations with local businesses breathed new life into the community. Once abandoned storefronts on Main Street were transformed into bustling cafes, boutiques, and innovative startups. Alex also launched scholarship programs for local students, ensuring opportunities he had once lacked. The gratitude of the community was tangible, but Alex stayed focused on his mission. This wasn't about redemption, it was about progress. He wasn't interested in reclaiming his old life. He was building something entirely new. As the sun dipped below the horizon one evening, Alex stood on the rooftop garden of the tech park, watching the lights of Millbrook sparkle in the growing darkness. His children joined him, their presence a reminder of everything he had fought for and gained. "You've done something incredible here," Emma said, her voice filled with admiration. Alex smiled, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "We've done this together, and it's only the beginning." In that moment, the stark difference between the man Alex had once been and the man he had become was undeniable. He had transformed pain into purpose, betrayal into resilience, and loss into legacy. Millbrook, once a symbol of his downfall, now stood as a testament to his strength and vision, a beacon of hope for the future. Marissa's life had diminished to a mere fraction of what it once was. The elegant dinner parties and prestige of her position at Millbrook General were long gone. Now, she worked in a small, overburdened clinic on the outskirts of town, treating minor illnesses and drowning in paperwork. The clinic's sterile white walls, adorned with outdated posters, were a far cry from the lavish office she had once occupied. Her patients were polite but detached, oblivious to the life she had once led. Each day, Marissa bore the weight of her regrets. But the heaviest burden came from her children. Now, adults they visited occasionally out of duty, their conversations polite but distant. Emma's quiet disappointment came through in her measured tone. Thomas limited his words to essentials, and Lucas, though respectful, never stayed long. The unrelenting guilt was compounded by the knowledge that Alex, the man she had betrayed, had become the anchor in their lives. He had succeeded beyond imagination, building a legacy her actions had almost destroyed. Her work at the clinic felt like a paltry penance, but no effort could repair the damage she had caused. Once a charismatic financial advisor with an impeccable reputation, Bruce now worked as a mid-level accountant at Hood Innovations. The irony was not lost on him. The company he served had been built by the very man he betrayed. His small, impersonal cubicle stood as a constant reminder of how far he had fallen. Every morning, Bruce clocked in, avoiding the eyes of younger, ambitious colleagues who had heard whispers of his past. His personal life was equally bleak. Krista, his ex-wife, had divorced him swiftly and ruthlessly, leaving him with little more than the clothes he managed to pack. Attempts to reconnect with his children were met with indifference, and he often ate dinner alone in his sparsely furnished apartment, the silence weighing heavily. Caroline fared no better. She now lived in a modest retirement home, far removed from the grand estate where she once entertained Millbrook's elite. Her small room, sparsely decorated with faded family photos and a few cherished trinkets, reflected the emptiness of her twilight years. The staff treated her kindly but distantly, and the other residents regarded her as just another tenant, unaware of her once commanding influence. Estranged from her grandchildren, Caroline spent her days in quiet reflection, haunted by the choices that had cost her everything: her family, her reputation, and her dignity. Letters from her grandchildren, when they came, were brief and devoid of warmth. Alex, though diligent in ensuring her financial needs were met, remained resolutely distant. In sharp contrast, Thomas, Emma, and Lucas flourished under Alex's mentorship. Supported by their trust funds, they thrived. Thomas, now 24, had climbed the ranks at Hood Innovations, earning the position of Director of Operations through sheer dedication. He often sought Alex's counsel, their bond one of mutual respect. Alex had become more than a father figure. He was a mentor and role model. Emma, 22, had found her calling as a leader in the arts community. Her therapeutic movement program for trauma survivors had gained national recognition, blending her passion for dance with her deep empathy. She often turned to Alex for advice on building a meaningful legacy, valuing his insight. Lucas, the youngest at 19, was a prodigy in his own right. Already making waves in blockchain innovation, He had spearheaded groundbreaking projects that earned him accolades within the tech world. Although he worked within Hood Innovations, his accomplishments stood on their own merit. His relationship with Alex had grown into one of mutual admiration, their conversations spanning topics from technology to philosophy. Though the siblings acknowledged Marissa and Bruce's attempts to rebuild their lives, they chose to center their own around Alex's values of integrity and perseverance. To them, Alex wasn't just a father in name, he was the one who had shaped their futures and taught them the power of resilience. Alex Hood had become a symbol of triumph over adversity. Hood Innovations, now a global powerhouse, embodied his values of transparency and integrity, resonating with employees and clients alike. The revitalized tech park had transformed Millbrook into a thriving hub of innovation, drawing talent from across the nation and reinvigorating the local economy. Beyond business, Alex's life stood as a testament to the possibility of turning betrayal into strength and forging a path defined by purpose. Alex's influence extended far beyond his business ventures. He funded scholarships for disadvantaged students, initiated mentorship programs for aspiring entrepreneurs, and poured resources into infrastructure projects that revitalized Millbrook. His presence was no longer tied to the scandals that once overshadowed the town. Instead, he became a symbol of its renewal. Despite his achievements, Alex remained humble, dividing his time between Millbrook and Singapore to maintain the balance that defined his new life. Evenings often found him lost in thought, gazing out over the landscapes he had helped transform, a cup of green tea in his hand. On days that felt especially significant, he would visit the rooftop garden atop Hood Innovations headquarters, where he often met with his children. Together, they discussed their futures, celebrated accomplishments, and occasionally reflected on the past. For Alex, these shared moments represented his true legacy, not the buildings or the wealth he had amassed, but the relationships he had rebuilt through honesty and love. Millbrook, once mired in stagnation, now flourished under Alex's guidance. The tech park, with its sleek modern design and vibrant energy, stood as a testament to progress. Local businesses thrived, schools received better funding, and families discovered new opportunities. Alex's name became synonymous with admiration, his journey a reminder that resilience could reshape not only a person's life, but also an entire community. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Alex walked through the tech park, the crunch of golden leaves beneath his feet, he paused to watch a group of young professionals brainstorming outside one of the innovation hubs. Their enthusiasm mirrored the drive he had felt at the start of his own journey. A quiet smile crossed his face. The pain of the past hadn't vanished, but it had been transformed, repurposed as the foundation of something far greater. Alex's triumph wasn't measured solely by his personal success, but also by the lives he touched, the community he helped rebuild, and the family he nurtured. In the end, Alex Hood's story wasn't about vengeance. It was a tale of resilience, redemption, and the enduring power of choice. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as families gathered to celebrate the graduating class. Alex Hood sat in the front row, flanked by Thomas and Emma, their faces glowing with pride. The moment was particularly special for Lucas, the youngest of Alex's children, who had achieved something extraordinary, graduating at the top of his class with a degree in blockchain innovation, a field he had already begun to revolutionize. As the ceremony unfolded, Alex's mind wandered, weaving together the threads of his journey. Betrayal had once consumed him, leaving him adrift in the wreckage of a life he had thought was secure. The lies from those closest to him, Marissa, Bruce, even Caroline, had nearly destroyed not only his family, but also his sense of self. Yet, in the depths of that despair, Alex found the seeds of resilience. He came to understand that betrayal wasn't an end, but a challenge, a test of his ability to rise above the pain and rebuild. He refused to let bitterness define him. Instead, he channeled his grief and anger into constructing something stronger, a legacy built on integrity, purpose, and hope. Betrayal, he realized, had taught him that true strength lies in confronting pain and thriving despite it. Through his choices, Alex demonstrated that integrity could prevail over deception. He built Hood Innovations not through shortcuts or manipulation, but through transparency and honesty. His company became a shining example of what could be achieved when one acts with purpose and principle. The same values guided his relationships, especially with his children. Despite the truth of their parentage, Alex's love for them never wavered. He chose to be the father they needed, showing them that family wasn't defined by blood, but by the bonds and values they chose to uphold. For Alex, family had taken on a new meaning. It was no longer about shared DNA or who was present at the start of his life. Family was about those who stood by each other, who lifted one another up, and who celebrated each other's successes and supported one another through failures. His relationships with Thomas, Emma, and Lucas embodied this reimagined concept. Each of them had forged their own paths, yet returned to Alex not out of duty but because they respected the man he had become and wanted to follow his example. As Lucas walked across the stage to receive his diploma, thunderous applause filled the room. Alex clapped louder than anyone, his chest swelling with pride. When Lucas turned toward the audience, his gaze searched for Alex. And when their eyes met, he smiled, a gesture that spoke volumes without words. After the ceremony, the family gathered outside beneath the warm glow of the setting sun. Lucas approached Alex, holding his diploma tightly. "This is as much yours as it is mine," he said, his voice steady yet emotional. "You taught me everything I needed to get here." Alex placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder and shook his head. "No, Lucas," he replied, "you earned this. I just showed you what was possible." Thomas and Emma joined them, and for a moment, the four stood together, a family united not by blood, but by choice. Alex looked at his children, now grown, each embodying the values he had worked so hard to instill, and felt a profound sense of peace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson, Alex reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The betrayal that once shattered him now felt like a distant memory, a chapter in a story of resilience and transformation. He had built a life rooted in purpose and integrity, a life that extended beyond himself to touch his family and community. In the end, Alex had discovered something far greater than revenge or restitution: fulfillment. His legacy wasn't just in the buildings he had erected or the company he had built, but in the lives he had changed, starting with his own. For Alex Hood, the journey was far from over, but he no longer feared what lay ahead. He had faced the worst and emerged stronger, ready to keep building a future, defined not by what was lost, but by what was gained. And for the first time in years, as he laughed with his children beneath the fading light, he felt truly happy.